The rain in Vancouver does not just fall. It wraps around you, presses into your collar, finds every gap between your skin and your coat. But standing on the front step of the building I had owned for 6 years, the chill crawling up my spine had nothing to do with the weather. A woman I had never seen in my life opened the door from the inside. A toddler balanced on her hip, a look of polite confusion spreading across her face. "Can I help you?" she asked. I pointed past her at the hallway, at the light fixture I had chosen myself. At the walls I had painted a shade of warm ivory, called antique linen. "I live here," I said. She tilted her head. "No." She said it the way people say things when they are trying to be kind about something that is not kind at all. "No. I don't think so. We closed on this unit in September." I looked at the door. Unit 1104. The number I had typed into every direct deposit form, every government document, every subscription renewal for 6 years. The number that meant home. She shifted the toddler to her other hip and reached into the drawer of the console table just inside the door. The console table I had bought at an antique market on Main Street. She pulled out a sheet of paper and held it toward me. "I have the transfer of title right here if you want to see it." I took it from her. My hands were not shaking. That surprised me. I read the document slowly. It was a standard transfer of title filed through the BC Land Title Office. The property at Unit 1104 had been transferred from my name to an interim numbered company, then sold to this woman and her husband for $740. 0 inches a private sale. The signature authorizing the transfer was mine, except I had not signed it. I had been sitting in a hotel conference room in Halifax watching a colleague present a case summary when that signature was supposedly drying on a document in Vancouver. I had not been in this city in 14 months. My sister did not just use my home while I was gone. She sold it. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know. Has someone in your family ever taken something from you and then told you it was for your own good? I read every single one. I handed the document back and stepped away from the door. The woman looked relieved. I did not blame her. She was not the person who had done this. She was just the name at the end of a transaction my sister had engineered while I was 3,000 kilometers away. I walked back to my rental car and sat with the engine running. I called the number for the property management office that handled the building. I asked about my mail and my storage unit. The woman on the phone checked her system and told me that the storage locker assigned to Unit 1104 had been emptied by the previous owner approximately 8 weeks ago, and that the items had been relocated. She gave me the name of a facility in Burnaby, out near the highway. Past the industrial parks and the discount furniture warehouses, I drove east with the wipers going the whole way. The storage facility was one of those places that exists on the edge of things. Chain link fencing, rows of orange roll-up doors, a security booth staffed by a teenager who looked at me like I had interrupted something important. He found the unit number linked to the name my sister had given. It was mine. She had signed a month-to-month agreement. The rent had not been paid in 5 weeks. When I rolled up the door, the smell came first. Damp cardboard and something chemical. Like mold had gotten into the packing tape and started breaking it down from the inside. November in Burnaby is not Phoenix in August. But unheated metal against the rain is its own particular cruelty. My furniture was stacked against the back wall in a way that suggested more urgency than care. The corner of my dining table was cracked. The legs of my reading chair were wrapped in a moving blanket. But the blanket was wet. I pulled open the first box I found with my handwriting on it. "Kitchen," it said. But inside was not my kitchen. Inside were the contents of the small cedar chest I had kept on my dresser. My grandmother's things. She had come to this country from Hong Kong in 1974, with a suitcase and a fabric-wrapped bundle of items she had carried from her mother's house. A pair of jade bangles, an embroidered handkerchief, a folded letter written in traditional Chinese characters that I had never been able to fully read, but had always kept because her hands had touched it. The bangles were gone. The box was there. The cedar interior still faintly scented. But the bangles and the handkerchief and the letter were all gone. My sister had not just moved my belongings. She had gone through them. She had taken the only things in that apartment that had not belonged to me in the first place. The only things I had been holding in trust. I sat down on the damp concrete floor of that storage unit in Burnaby, and I held the empty cedar box, and I felt something leave me. It was not grief. Not exactly. It was the specific version of sadness that comes from realizing you had been holding on to a version of your family that did not exist. The sister who called me every Sunday and asked about my cases. The parents who told their friends their youngest was doing very well for herself out east. I had believed in that version. I had sent money home every month because I believed in it. I had paid for my father's knee surgery without being asked. I had co-signed my mother's car loan because her credit had taken a hit. She did not want to explain. I had done all of it because I thought we were a family. I put the cedar box in my bag, and I stood up. I rolled the storage door back down. I walked to the car. I did not call my mother to tell her what I had found. I did not call my sister to ask for an explanation. I opened my laptop on the passenger seat and I got to work. My family knew I worked in finance. They had always found it mildly impressive, in an abstract way. The kind of thing you mention at dinner parties, without really understanding. She works for the government. My mother would say. With numbers. Very stable. They knew I had a degree from UBC in accounting, and that I had done my CPA designation, and that I had spent the last 5 years working in Halifax. Which they found inexplicably provincial, given that I had left Vancouver for it. What they did not know. Because I had learned a long time ago, that the less my family knew about my actual capabilities, the safer I was that my job at the federal level had nothing to do with balancing ledgers. I was not a glorified bookkeeper. I was an investigator with the Canada Revenue Agency's Criminal Investigations Program. I spent my days building financial prosecutions. I followed money through layered corporate structures and nominee directors and cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore holding accounts. I had helped build cases that led to convictions, resulting in combined sentences of over 40 years. I found money that people tried very hard to make disappear. Me sister, who thought she had simply outmaneuvered her workaholic younger sibling, had just handed me a file. I started with the Land Title Office database. I pulled the full chain of title for Unit 1104 and laid it out chronologically. In March of that year, while I was in the middle of a 6-month contract assignment in Halifax that my sister knew about, a limited power of attorney document had been filed, naming my sister as my authorized representative for the purpose of real property transactions. The document was notarized by a notary public in North Vancouver. The signature on the document was mine. It was a very good forgery. The notary's name was a man I did not recognize. I ran his information. He had been practicing for 11 years, with a clean record, which meant either he had been deceived about who was sitting in front of him, or he had made a significant professional error. And both of those things were going to be relevant later. Next came the numbered company. The property had not been sold directly from my name to the woman at the door. It had been transferred first to a BC numbered company. 128764 BC Limited. Incorporated 8 months prior. I pulled the corporate registry. The sole director was listed as a man I did not know. But the registered office address was the home address of my sister's boyfriend. A man I will call Marcus. Because that is his name, and he should not be difficult to find if anyone feels like looking. So, my sister had incorporated a company, using her boyfriend as a nominee director. Had filed a fraudulent power of attorney document to transfer my condo into that company. And had then sold the condo, at slightly below market value. Presumably to move it quickly. She had pocketed the proceeds of a $740,000 real estate transaction, and I had been in Halifax reading financial disclosures for a fraud case that now felt almost quaint in comparison. I traced the funds. The proceeds from the sale had flowed from the lawyer's trust account into a joint bank account belonging to my sister and Marcus. From there, they had moved quickly. The way money moves when someone knows they are doing something wrong and wants distance between themselves and it. Transaction 1. $48. 000 to a luxury car dealership in Richmond. A white Mercedes GLE. The kind of SUV that says I arrived somewhere without specifying where. Transaction 2. $000 to a jeweler in Yaletown. I pulled the merchant records. On engagement ring. 3 carats, according to the item description in the wire transfer notation. My sister was engaged. I had not been told. Transaction $315. 000 to a travel agency. Business class flights, and a 10-night stay at a resort in the Maldives. For 2. She had taken my home and spent it on a life she wanted to perform for other people. I kept pulling. The rest of the money. Just under $650. Ling ling ling. was sitting in a high-interest savings account. She had not touched it. She thought she was being smart by not spending all of it immediately. She thought patience made it safer. She did not understand that from my side of the screen. A large cash position, just sitting there, is not a sign of innocence. It is a sign that someone is waiting for the right moment to move it somewhere harder to find. I organized everything into a single folder. Passport scans. My Halifax hotel receipts with timestamps. My airline loyalty account showing every flight I had taken in the past 2 years. None of which included a trip to Vancouver in March. A screenshot of a video call I had with a colleague on the afternoon the POA was supposedly signed, which placed me clearly in a Halifax office at 3 in the afternoon, while the notary stamp on the document showed a time of 2:15 Pacific, which was 5:15 my time. I had been in a meeting. I had a calendar invitation, an email chain, and a colleague who had been sitting across the table from me. Then I made a call I had been thinking about carefully for the previous 3 hours. I called my mother. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice had that particular quality it got when she was managing something. Not warm. Not cold. Brisk. "Oh. You're back," she said. "How was the drive from the airport? I'm in Burnaby," I said. "At the storage unit where my furniture is. My condo has been sold." There was a pause. Then she sighed. The sigh of someone performing inconvenience rather than feeling it. "Okay," she said. "So you know. I want you to tell me that you had nothing to do with it." I said. "I want you to say those words." She did not say those words. She said your sister was in a very difficult position. You don't know what her life has been like this past year. She has been struggling. Financially. Emotionally. And you have been away doing your career. And she has been here dealing with things. She sold my condo. I said. She made a decision. My mother said. Her voice hardening. She made a decision for the family. You have always had more than you needed. You never even lived there half the year. You know how expensive Vancouver is. You know how hard it is to get started here. Your sister just needed a foundation. She's going to pay you back. She told me she's going to pay you back once she and Marcus get their investment settled. Their investment? I said. Your sister has been very smart with money. My mother said. Marcus has a business. They're building something together. What they did. Maybe it wasn't the right way to go about it. But May is not a criminal. She's your sister. She called me greedy once when I was 15, for not wanting to lend her my birthday money. She said it then, with the same tone she was using now. Like my wanting to keep what belonged to me was a character defect. I hung up without saying goodbye. I called my sister. She answered, after one ring, which told me she had been waiting. Her voice was careful at first, feeling out how much I knew. Okay, she said. So Mom told you. Look, before you lose it, just listen. I'm listening. I said. I was going to tell you. She said. I just needed more time. Marcus and I have a plan. The condo was just sitting there. You never even came home. Do you know the last time you were in Vancouver for more than 4 days you abandoned us? Maya. You left for Halifax like this city, stopped mattering to you, and you send money like that, makes up for being completely absent, and then you wonder why things happened the way they did. There it was. The logic that makes theft feel like justice. She could not let herself be the person who committed fraud. That would make her the villain of her own story. So she had rewritten it. My absence became abandonment. My savings became hoarding. My career became a betrayal of the family I had left behind. In her version of events, she had not stolen from me. She had corrected an imbalance. She had taken what the universe owed her, and had merely run the transaction through my name. You forged my signature. I said. I managed a situation. She said. Her voice shifting into something harder. You would have said no. You always say no to family. Where is the money? May, it's being managed. She said. You wouldn't understand the structure. Marcus has advisors. We're in a vehicle that takes time to mature. When it settles, you'll get your portion of the proceeds. Just trust the process. She said, trust the process to me. To a crime investigator. With a file folder open on my passenger seat, containing every transaction she had made in the past 6 months. I know where the money is, I said quietly. She laughed. Okay. Okay. Cool down. We'll talk when you're less emotional. The line went dead. I looked out through the windshield at the rain still coming down over the parking lot of the storage facility. A seagull was fighting with a piece of plastic wrap near the dumpster, somewhere on the other side of the city. My sister was sitting in an apartment she could now afford to furnish properly, wearing an engagement ring bought with my equity, planning a Maldives honeymoon on my square footage. I closed my eyes for 4 seconds. When I opened them, I was not my parents' younger daughter. I was not the one who always called on holidays. I was not the person who wired money every month and told herself it was love and not management. I was an investigator. And I had a file. I drove to the nearest Tim Hortons, ordered a large black coffee, and opened my laptop on the table by the window. The rain was streaking the glass and the place smelled like double-doubles and wet jackets, and I had never in my life felt more focused. I started building the case package. The power of attorney document was the anchor. A fraudulent POA used to transfer real property is a criminal offense under the Criminal Code of Canada. Combined with the fraudulent transfer of title, the use of a nominee corporation to layer the transaction, and the traceable movement of proceeds. What my sister had done was not a family dispute. It was fraud over $5,000. Breach of trust, identity theft, and potentially money laundering. Depending on how a Crown attorney wanted to characterize the numbered company structure, I documented every layer. The notary's filing had procedural irregularities. Under BC notary standards, identification must be verified in person, and the signatory must be physically present. The timestamp on the notarized document was inconsistent with my demonstrably verified location in Halifax at that time. Either the notary had failed to verify identity adequately, which was a professional conduct issue, or someone had sat in front of him pretending to be me. I flagged both possibilities and noted that the notary's license would be a matter for the BC Society of Notaries, and that my evidence package would be made available to them. The numbered company dissolved itself as a shield. The moment I mapped the beneficial ownership, Marcus was a nominee. My sister was the operating mind. The corporate veil, zoot as it was made of wet tissue paper. I printed the complete package at a FedEx office on Broadway. I had it organized into tabbed sections: the fraudulent POA, the chain of title, the corporate registry records, the transaction records, the time-stamped alibi documentation, and a brief appendix on the notarization irregularities. I had a cover letter summarizing the criminal provisions engaged and the total value of the fraudulent transaction. Then I drove to the Vancouver Police Department's non-emergency report center. The officer at the front desk looked at me, the way front desk officers look at everyone, which is to say, with the expression of someone who has heard most things. I put the package on the counter and told him I was not there to make a preliminary complaint. I told him I was there to hand him a complete evidentiary package for a fraud case with a total transaction value of $740,000, and that I had already flagged the matter informally to a colleague in the CRA's Criminal Investigations Program, who had agreed to send a parallel referral if the police wished to pursue it from multiple angles. He looked at the cover page. He looked at me. He called someone. 45 minutes later, I was sitting across from a detective in a small office with a dying plant in the corner and a whiteboard covered in someone else's case notes. She read through my package methodically. She did not ask if this was a family misunderstanding. She asked 3 clarifying questions about the numbered company, confirmed the section numbers I had cited were correct, and then told me she was going to need authorization for some of the financial record pulls, but that the POA fraud was clean and the chain of title documentation was excellent work. I said thank you. She said, "You're welcome," in the way people say it when they mean you did half my job for me. I walked back out into the rain. I had one more thing to do. My sister was engaged. There was going to be an engagement party. I had found out through my cousin, who had texted me 2 days before I flew back to Vancouver to ask if I was coming. My cousin did not know what was happening. She thought I was simply busy. I told her I would try to make it. I did not tell her anything else. The party was at a restaurant in Gastown that I knew. A converted heritage building with exposed brick and Edison bulbs, and a Prix Fixe menu that started at $90 a head. The reservation was under my sister's name for 16 people. My cousin had forwarded me the details, without understanding she was giving me a location. I arrived 40 minutes after the reservation time. which put me past the awkward early drinks portion and into the settled rhythm of the meal. I had gone back to my hotel and changed into clean clothes, and washed my face, and stood in the bathroom mirror for a moment deciding who I was going to be in there. Not the little sister with something to prove. Not the wronged party arriving to make a scene. Just someone who had come to return something. The hostess told me the party was already seated. I walked through to the back. They were at a long table in the corner, lit by candlelight. The kind of dinner that photographs well. My sister was at the center with Marcus beside her. The ring was visible from across the room, catching the light the way a 3-carat stone will. My parents were there. My aunt and uncle. 4 or 5 people I recognized as my sister's friends and their partners. Everyone was laughing. Marcus was telling a story. My sister was leaning into him with the ease of someone who felt very settled. She saw me first. Her face did not collapse. It rearranged itself. The laugh became a held expression. The eyes went sharp. And for a fraction of a second, before she could smooth it away, I saw something there that was not guilt. It was calculation. She was already thinking about the story she was going to tell the table. Maya, she said. She made my name sound like a question. This is a surprise. I walked to the end of the table. I was aware of my parents watching me. My mother's expression already building towards something performative. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said to the table generally. Because politeness costs nothing, and I meant it. I just need a minute. I put the copy of the evidence package on the table in front of my sister. Not the full binder. A 6-page summary I had printed separately. With the key documents, the fraudulent POA, the chain of title, the transaction records, the alibi documentation. I want to give you the chance to see what I've already given to the VPD. I said. Fraud over 5,000. Identity theft. The numbered company is dissolved, but the beneficial ownership is documented. The detective I spoke to this afternoon seemed quite thorough. Marcus picked up the top page. The color left his face at the speed of someone who had not thought this through as carefully as he believed. My sister stared at me. You wouldn't, she said. I already did, I said. That was the moment my mother chose to intervene. She rose from her chair and put her hand on my arm. Not gently. And told me in a voice designed for performance that I was being cruel. That I was humiliating my sister at her own celebration. That our grandmother would be ashamed of me for doing this to family. I thought about the empty cedar box in my bag. Grandma's bangles are gone, I said. Not loudly. Her letter is gone. You let that happen. All of you sat at this table together while that happened. My mother opened her mouth. My father put his hand on hers. The rest of the table had gone very quiet in the way that people go quiet when they understand they are witnessing something that is not going to resolve itself quickly. I picked the summary pages back up off the table. I don't need anything from you, I said to my sister. Not an apology. Not the money. The police are going to sort that out. I just needed you to know that I know. All of it. I looked at Marcus. He was still holding the top page of the package, like it might say something different if he read it one more time. The numbered company was a nice touch, I said. It just wasn't as opaque as you thought. My sister stood up. Her voice had dropped to something that was no longer performing for the table. She was speaking only to me. I did what I had to do, she said. You were never here. You never needed it the way I did. You stole from me, I said. Whatever story you told yourself to get there. That's what happened. She had nothing left after that. Not because she had no arguments. She had plenty. She had spent months building the arguments, constructing the narrative, rehearsing the justification. But none of her arguments were built to hold up in a room where the other person knew every number. I left the restaurant. I stood on the wet cobblestones of Gastown, and I breathed in the cold Vancouver air and the smell of rain on old brick, and I felt, for the first time in what seemed like a very long time, like myself. The investigation moved quickly because I had given the VPD a package that required very little additional work to build a charge recommendation. My sister was arrested 6 days later. Marcus was arrested the same afternoon. The notary public received a referral to the BC Society of Notaries and surrendered his license pending investigation. The Mercedes was seized. The engagement ring was seized. The funds remaining in the joint account were frozen pending the outcome of the proceedings. My parents did not call me after the arrest. My father sent a text that read, "We are very disappointed." I read it once and did not respond. My aunt called and left a voicemail telling me I should have handled it privately, and that I had broken something in the family that could not be repaired. I played the voicemail twice because I wanted to hear it clearly, and then I deleted it. My cousin called too. But hers was different. She said, "I had no idea, and I believe you, and I'm sorry this happened to you." I told her it wasn't her fault and I meant it. The woman who had bought the condo legally was not required to vacate. Her purchase had been made in good faith, and her title was protected under the Land Title Act's provisions for innocent purchasers. The proceeds of the fraudulent sale, once recovered through the civil forfeiture process, would come back to me. My lawyer told me it would take time. I told him I was not in a hurry. I had waited this long. I moved into a furnished one-bedroom rental in Mount Pleasant, while everything sorted itself out. It was smaller than I was used to, and the bathroom tiles were aggressively orange, and the radiator made a sound at 3 a.m. that I eventually stopped hearing. I bought a new coffee maker. I found a farmer's market nearby. I called my cousin twice a week. One evening in February, I was sitting at my small kitchen table with a glass of wine and a crossword I was only halfway succeeding at. And I realized I had not thought about my parents in 4 days. Not as a deliberate exercise in distance, simply because the part of my brain that had been continuously running the calculations of their well-being, the monitoring of their needs, the quiet, constant maintenance of their approval, had finally gone quiet. The software had uninstalled itself. My grandmother had come to this country with a suitcase and a fabric bundle, and had built something from nothing. In a city that did not always want her there. Through the specific stubbornness of a woman who had decided she was not going to be stopped. I was her youngest grandchild, and I had her nose and her stubbornness, and apparently her inability to back down from a fight once I had decided to have it. The bangles were gone. The letter was gone. I was not going to get those back. But I had the memory of her hands. I had the way she used to press both palms flat on either side of my face when she saw me after a long absence. Like she was taking a measurement she wanted to keep. I had that. My sister could not file that into a numbered company and transfer it away. 3 months later, I received a letter from the Civil Forfeiture Office with an update on the recovery timeline. My lawyer was cautiously optimistic. I put the letter in a folder and made myself dinner and watched the city lights come on across the downtown as the sky went from gray to dark. I was not a daughter managing her family's opinion of her. I was not a sister waiting to be forgiven for succeeding. I was not the person who kept the peace by making herself smaller. I was just Maya. It cost me more than I want to say. I would pay it again without hesitating. If you have ever had to choose between your family's comfort and your own survival, and you chose yourself, you are not cold. You are just finally free. Subscribe. You belong here.